Rivers are like the circulatory system of our planet. The Amazon alone, the largest river in terms of water volume and basin, pours approximately 219 million liters of water into the world ocean every second. This is about 20% of global riverine discharge into oceans. The longest river, the Nile, which stretches for 6,650 kilometers, was the cradle of ancient civilizations and is still one of the most important sources of water and food for a dozen African states. The deepest river in the world, the Congo River, with a depth of 220 meters, plays a key role in the development of the inland regions of Central Africa. These and other rivers provide the livelihood of our planet and millions, no, billions of people. But they can also bring death and destruction. In this video, you will learn which river killed 1 million people at once, what dangerous creatures live in the Amazon River, which river is home to the largest crocodiles, and how many are there? And finally, why are some rivers full of threats to humans? You'll find the answers to these and many other questions in our new video, The Most Dangerous Rivers in the World. And to watch even more exciting content, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Of course, floods are the first thing that comes to mind when we talk about the danger of rivers. We constantly hear and read the news that some rivers have overflowed their banks and flooded regions. But often, we do not imagine the full scale of such disasters. But floods are the most common type of natural disaster. Yes, not earthquakes, not hurricanes. Over the past 40 years, the annual number of floods has more than doubled. Many experts blame climate change for this. One of the worst river floods in recent decades occurred in Pakistan in 2010, when the Indus River overflowed its banks. It affected more than 20% of the country's territory. That is more than 176,000 square kilometers. This area is approximately the size of the states of West Virginia, Maryland, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts combined. Do you now feel the scale of such a catastrophe? These floods affected approximately 20 million people. 6 million were forced from their homes, and most never returned. But floods are not the only danger posed by rivers. They have many other dangerous secrets, and now we will reveal them. Let's start with the river that has the greatest number of tributaries in the world. Might is the word that comes to mind when you look at the majestic, dangerous, and yet enchanting Amazon River. It is also the world's largest river by discharge volume of water, and, according to different sources, the world's longest or second longest river. That title is disputed between it and the Nile. It stretches for no less than 6,400 kilometers. That's the distance between New York and Rome in a straight line. The Amazon is also home to many animals that you'd better meet only in pictures. One of them is the huge green anaconda. It is one of the longest and heaviest snakes on Earth. Its length can reach 6.5 meters. The weight of an adult individual ranges between 30 and 80 kilograms. Imagine 80 kilograms of live weight wrapped around you. Yes, deadly strangulation is the signature hunting technique of the anaconda. But these snakes also have a strategy. They swim fast underwater, with only their eyes and nose sticking out above the surface. So the snake can breathe and watch its prey while the rest of the body is hidden. When the unsuspecting prey comes closer, for example, in order to drink, the anaconda wraps it, squeezes it, and strangles it to death. Admittedly, there have been a few registered cases of attacks on humans in recent years, perhaps because the areas where green anacondas live are sparsely populated. But still, one should be cautious. For example, in 1998, there were 2 attacks on the assistance of researcher Jesus Rivera from the University of New Mexico. Both survived. Another dangerous inhabitant of the Amazon is the electric eel. This shocking creature is capable of generating about 600 volts, which is 5 times more than in a standard socket. When hunting, it usually spares electricity and only goes all out when it senses danger. The electric eel feeds on invertebrates, fish, and small mammals, but there have been incidents with humans as well. Be aware, the eel can electrocute even 8 hours after death, exactly due to the accumulated electricity. But apart from living creatures, another threat has infiltrated the waters of the Amazon, which, by the way, poses a danger to wildlife. It's mercury. This metal has devastating effects on humans, animals, and the environment. Mercury impacts the brain, nervous system, kidneys, and lungs. It causes lower IQ, poor coordination, and susceptibility to disease. Mercury is released into the Amazon as a result of mining activities. As a result, today, people in this region, especially in indigenous communities, have high levels of mercury in their bodies. It is 7.5 times higher than the baseline level. Mostly, the dangerous metal is ingested by eating fish. In 2016, the authorities in Madre de Dios even announced a state of emergency in 11 districts due to mercury poisoning of the local population. Another river affected by human activities is the Congo. In 2021, toxic substances from 3 diamond processing plants in neighborhood Angola flowed into its main tributary, the Kasai River. It all came to light when authorities noticed the unusual color of the water. It turned red. There were also dead fish and even bodies of dead hippos floating in it. This may seem unnatural, but some locals took advantage of the situation and started pulling out dead fish and eating them. In addition, local communities were using the water before they knew it had been contaminated. As a result, more than 400 people reported serious gastrointestinal problems after drinking this water. Its samples, as well as samples of fish and dead animal bones, were sent to a veterinary laboratory. Researchers were concerned because the groundwater was at risk of long-term contamination. Traces of a toxic spill were spotted a few kilometers away from Kasai. The overall result of the disastrous incident was devastating. 12 people died, 4,400 fell ill, and over 950,000 more were in some ways affected by the contaminated water. In total, the incident affected 200 villages that rely on rivers as the source of 80% of their total water supply. Much of the river's aquatic life was destroyed. 14 months later, the ban on drinking water from the Kasai River remained in effect. But that's not all that lurks in the waters of the Congo. There are real monsters. This was proven by British angler and TV show host Jeremy Wade. He caught the Goliath tigerfish during a fishing expedition up the Congo. The name alone suggests that this species is something remarkable. This ferocious freshwater specimen reaches a length of 1.5 meters and can boast of 32 sharp 4-inch teeth. It can easily eat prey the size of itself and attack humans. Wade's catch weighed in at 45 kilograms. Few fishermen can brag that they have caught a Goliath tigerfish, which looks like a more dangerous version of a piranha. The slightest carelessness may cost you a finger. What was the fate of the caught monster? Maybe it was fried and eaten. Not at all. Wade let it back in the river. Would you dare to hold a fish like that? Share your thoughts in the comments. However, sometimes the danger lies in the very nature of the river. This is the case of the Sharda River, also called the Kali River. It originates in the Himalayas at an altitude of 3,600 meters and stretches for 350 kilometers across the territory of India and Nepal. A few years ago, the monsoons caused the overflowing of the Sharda River. The water level rose, causing floods in the surrounding communities. Numerous villages in the vicinity were impacted. Wild animals in nearby reserved areas were forced out, and disturbances occurred, some of which ended in fatalities. The animals, deprived of their usual habitat, began to wander onto roads in an attempt to escape from the water to upland areas. As a result, some of them were hit by vehicles. A total of 13 villages suffered damage. The World Wildlife Fund, WWF, assisted India in this emergency by donating essential supplies and aid kits, coordinating activities between different government agencies, and helping with logistics. Locals were examined by medical staff and provided with medicines and rehabilitation camps. This was not the only case of the Sharda overflow. This river has been in the news regularly for causing floods. Another reason this river has become the talk of the town is the disappearances of people in its waters as a result of mysterious attacks. The first one happened in 1998. A 17-year-old guy was dragged underwater in front of his friend and eyewitnesses. A 3-day search had no results. Then, 3 months later, the story repeated itself with a young boy. He was dragged underwater in front of his father, who witnessed it helplessly. Again, the body was never found. And the last attack was in 2007, when an 18-year-old Nepalese man was dragged down. According to witnesses, he was snatched by something that looked like a mud-colored water pig. The British biologist Jeremy Wade, who we've already been talking about, set out to find out what was behind it all. All attacks occurred in a certain area stretching 6.4 kilometers. Wade ruled out whirlpools straight away because there were none in the area. Later, another incident happened here. A buffalo that was drinking water got dragged under the water. Wade estimated that the perpetrator must have weighed between 91 and 136 kilograms, while the buffalo weighed 300 to 400 kilograms. The researcher also ruled out crocodiles. They don't come that far inland. Bull sharks, which they wanted to blame for the buffalo, were not found in the area. But during an underwater investigation, giant goonch catfish were spotted, 6 of which were the size of a man. Eventually, a record-breaking 2-meter catfish weighing 73 kilograms was caught. That is, it was 3 times the weight of the average individual of its species. Wade concluded that the fish caught was strong and large enough to eat a child, but still not big enough to be the cause of the rest of the incidents. There were probably larger specimens. Would you risk bathing in this infamous spot after our story? No? Then let's cautiously approach our next subject. Because although sacred, it is one of the most polluted rivers in the world, the Ganges. This river is living proof that antibiotic-resistant bacteria are found almost everywhere. Stretching over 2,414 kilometers to the Bay of Bengal, the Maganga, the Mother Ganges, is a mixture of urban sewage, livestock wastes, pesticides, fertilizers, and rivulets of ashes of cremated bodies. Some 300 million liters of untreated residential wastewater is discharged into the river every day. And in Varanasi, the ancient Indian city on the Ganges with a population exceeding 1 million, for example, 35 drains and sewers flow into the great river, 2 of which are just a few miles upstream from where children are taught to swim. Bacteria levels in the Ganges are incredibly high. People are one of the main sources of those. Crowds of ritual bathers come here to wash off their sins and immerse themselves in the water. What's the danger of this? Bacteria that are resistant to antibiotics develop here. Researchers regularly take samples along the entire Ganges and test them for medicine-resistant organisms. The high levels of bacteria found in the downstream parts of the river were not a surprise, as people interact a lot with the water in these areas. But scientists found bacteria with resistant genes even in the first 161 kilometers of the river, near the foothills of the Himalayas. The levels of these bacteria were consistently low in winter and increased sharply during the pilgrimage season, i.e. May and June. And downstream, levels of the medicine-resistant gene became 20 times higher. Considering this data, it is not surprising that India has one of the highest rates of antibiotic resistance in the world. About 70% of the 4 types of bacteria commonly found in hospital patients in India are resistant to first-line antibiotics. And so far, there is no solution to this problem. Now, let's move on to the longest river in Africa. As you have probably already guessed, we are talking about the Nile. We mentioned that it competes with the Amazon for the rank of the longest river in the world. But the question of the source, and therefore the length of the Nile, remains open. When we say Nile and danger, most people think of the Nile crocodile. Do you think attacks on humans are rare? Then we're going to disabuse you. The Nile crocodile's reputation is far more ominous. But first, let's see what it looks like. As you can see, it's a rather large species. This reptile can reach a size of 6 meters and weigh up to 748 kilograms. The diet of the Nile crocodile consists mainly of fish, but it attacks almost anything that gets in its way. This includes zebras, small hippos, porcupines, birds, and even other crocodiles. It also feeds on dead flesh and can eat up to half its weight in a single meal. Also, these reptiles live close to humans, which results in frequent confrontations. Nile crocodiles are not too picky about their food, which means that a rural dweller washing clothes on the riverbank can look as tasty to them as a wildebeest. Careless behavior is the most common cause of tragedies. Swimming, hanging your legs over a boat or pier, or active interaction with the water is enough to provoke a crocodile to attack. Due to this, washerwomen, fishermen, wildlife inspectors, and guides are mostly at risk. There are no exact figures, but it is estimated that a total of up to 200 people die each year from Nile crocodile attacks. This means fatal attacks are more frequent than every 2 days. Most attacks occur in the Korogwe district, Tanzania, Niassa Reserve, Mozambique, and the area around Lower Zambezi National Park, Zambia. Interestingly, this fearsome predator is also a caring parent. Most reptiles lay eggs and leave, but the Nile crocodiles carefully guard their nests. By the way, in the 1940s to 1960s, Nile crocodiles were on the verge of extinction. They were hunted mainly for their skin, and to a lesser extent for their meat and the alleged healing properties of their organs. But protection measures taken have helped them recover in most regions. In some areas, however, contamination of their habitat has severely reduced their numbers. And we move on to the rebellious river, which provides surprises from time to time. It is the 15th longest river in the world and flows through Tibet, India, and Bangladesh. It is the Brahmaputra. In July 2023, it overflowed its banks in the Indian state of Assam. As a result, over 41,000 people were afflicted in 10 districts. The Brahmaputra's tributaries, the Beki and the Desang, also overflowed, flooding many districts. As a result, 179 villages were affected by floods. 2,211 hectares in the state were affected. Dhemaji and Shirong districts were the worst impacted. 2,731 people have taken shelter in the camps. Roads, bridges, culverts, and embankments were destroyed due to floods. Parts of the Kaziranga National Park, the largest habitat for valuable one-horned rhinos, were also flooded. This caused many animals to rush to seek elevated areas. But the river has sprung such surprises more than once before. In fact, flooding occurs every year. The year 2012 stood out in this regard. There were heavy monsoon rains, so flooding was unprecedented. 124 people died, and about 6 million had to leave their homes. Again, the state of Assam suffered the most. In the already mentioned Kaziranga Park, there was also a big disaster. 540 animals died, including 16 rhinos. During the rainy season from June to October, floods are common in India. In 2013, the Brahmaputra floods affected 396 villages and destroyed about 7,000 hectares of farmland. The results of flooding in the following years were devastating as well. In 2022, for example, more than 6,000 people were affected and 25 died. thousands of villages and more than 60,000 hectares of crops were impacted. At the same time, this river is very important to the people of India and Bangladesh. The lives of millions of citizens depend on it. To be precise, 130 million people live in the river delta, and 600,000 people live on the river islands. Annual floods bring them the moisture they need for agriculture and mariculture. 2 of the 3 seasonal rice varieties, Aus and Amman, especially need water. And of course, residents count on the fish caught during the floods. And yet, many have to pay the price for this benefit in the end. Now, get ready for some steep turns, because we are on the African Zambezi River, which flows through 6 countries. You often hear the word rafting mentioned together with its name, and there is a good reason for that. With its rapids and turbulent currents in some parts, it seems to have been created for this extreme sport. Enough to say that the 3,000-kilometer-long river is dotted with unexploded mines and deadly rapids. Its banks are inhabited by 188,000 crocodiles and 90,000 hippos, and the water itself is home to bull sharks. But more than 10 years ago, one swimmer made a journey down it on an inflatable bodyboard. It's a shortened board that can be controlled from a lying position. He was drawn to the fact that the Zambezi is considered one of the most dangerous rivers in the world. The journey took 3 months, during which he was in the water for up to 12 hours a day. Below Victoria Falls, 20 dangerous rapids awaited him, but the man passed them on his inflatable bodyboard. On the final part of the journey, the river was swarming with sharks, but the swimmer arrived safely at his destination. There are other dangers here too. In 2009, there was a real fish epidemic. The disease was called epizootic ulcerative syndrome, EUS, and was caused by a fungus that caused fish to suffer from lacerated wounds. The outbreak particularly struck Zambia, which occupies 2/3 of the river basin. At the time, more than 2,000 villages were at risk of starvation because fish was the main source of income in many rural communities. Now, let's return briefly to an important spot on the Zambezi River, the dangerous Victoria Falls. It is particularly popular among tourists and at a very specific time, the dry season. Why? Because then you can take a stunning photo at the edge of the falls. Imagine foaming water comes off a steep cliff, and you are lying in a safe pool at the very top of the falls. However, its name doesn't instill confidence. It's called the Devil's Pool. In the dry season, the depth is 2 to 3 meters, and the natural rock formations that create a barrier between swimmers and falling water are at a safe level. That is, the water level is low enough that visitors can safely swim in the pool, with safety precautions, of course. In addition, visitors are supervised by trained guides. The pool is located just inches from the edge of the falls. It offers a spectacular view of Victoria Falls. Although, as you can see, this adventure is not for those faint of heart. But is it actually possible to fall from the Devil's Pool? It is possible to accidentally slip off the edge of the falls during the rainy season. When the water level is high, the pool can even disappear completely, but you won't be allowed to go there at that time. And to finish our journey along the dangerous Zambezi, let's take a look at the red-legged clawed frog, which lives in the river's backwaters. Its legs are armed with poisonous claws, and its skin secretes poisonous mucus. If these secretions get into the bloodstream, a person can die of cardiac paralysis in as little as 2 minutes. But now you are warned, so you are safe. And we move from hot Africa to the severe conditions of the Russian Far East, to the icy embrace of the Lena River. It is the 11th longest river in the world. Its length is 4,294 kilometers. The area of the Lena Basin is 2,490,000 square kilometers. This river is the cause of frequent annual floods. As a result, many houses get inundated. In 2020, the Lena came close to the city of Yakutsk, where temperatures can reach a blood-chilling -64 degrees Celsius. The water level has reached 841 centimeters, although the mark of 827 centimeters is considered dangerous. The danger arose due to ice drifting, which has been going on for years with difficulties. To ensure the safe passage of ice, they started blasting the ice. Such a measure is applied in exceptional cases, but such a case had just come. The water was already flooding into the streets. Residents whose houses were flooded were transferred to temporary accommodation centers. Hunters, who, despite the warnings, went to the islands, also had to be rescued. Such recurrent floods inflict serious damage to the economy and social sphere of Yakutia every year. The Lena River is also notable for its dangerous ice route, which is open from November-December until mid-April. This is where you can find a really thrilling experience. The Lena River Ice Road connects Yakutsk on the western bank and the urban-type settlement of Nizhny Bestyak on the eastern bank. It is said to be one of the most dangerous roads in Russia. This amazing highway is 15 kilometers long and runs through the ice cover of the Lena River. It carries vital goods to remote settlements. It is the only crossing that connects Yakutsk with the northern regions beyond the Lena. For example, in 2020, a car with 5 passengers fell through the ice, 2 of whom could not get out of it. The ice thickness at the site of the ice hole was about 20 centimeters. In 2021, a driver literally played with death while crossing this half-melted ice road. Eventually, he had to be towed, almost completely submerged in water. In 2023, a tractor with 2 people went under the ice. The ice thickness in that place was 15 centimeters. And in 2024, a whole truck loaded with coal fell through the ice. In other words, this road is not only one of the most important, but also one of the most unsafe. Sometimes the crossing can't hold heavy trucks, as in the case of the coal truck, and they go under the ice. Sometimes the crossing is closed. Most of the year, the river is impassable due to flooding, ice flows, or half-melted ice that can't bear the weight of vehicles. Is there nothing that can be done about it? Actually, there was a proposal to build a river crossing valued at over $1.2 billion, but it was put off for almost 20 years and has not yet been approved. In 1 minute, the current of the next river can carry you the distance of several soccer fields. This turbulent stream can be found in the Mississippi. It is the 4th largest river in the world by watershed, covering 31 states and 2 Canadian provinces. The flow can be as high as 28,316 cubic meters per second. Impressive, isn't it? But it's also dangerous, obviously. The Mississippi is almost 5 times faster in the spring than it is in late summer. The current gets even stronger wherever the river narrows. It can be compared to putting your thumb partially over the opening of a garden hose. You thereby leave less space for the water, and it flows faster. As the river flows, it interacts with the unevenness at the bottom, which slows its flow down below. So on the surface, where there is no such friction, the current is faster. Another danger is whirlpools. These form around some object in the water, such as large rocks and submerged trees. Water flows around the obstacle and the pools behind it, creating a whirlpool that swirls around like a drain in a sink. This again poses a danger to people and animals that can be dragged underwater. Ferries and ships can navigate the Mississippi safely because of their powerful engines that withstand the strong current. Yet, people who would try to swim there, as you might have understood, are in danger. It's difficult for even a good swimmer to survive it. In addition, the Mississippi River has suffered from pollution and other environmental problems over the years, which has not made it any safer. Its main danger to humans is Escherichia coli, which causes serious illness in people and animals. It usually enters the water with sewage. Rain washes pet and wildlife waste from yards, trails, sidewalks, and other surfaces into the river either directly or through the city's storm drainage systems. Because of this, E. coli levels in the Mississippi River can vary widely. Therefore, experts advise against swimming for 2 days after heavy rainfall. That's when bacteria levels in the river are the highest. And now we've reached our final location. In June 1855, it rained heavily in Henan Province, China. It all poured into the Yellow River, the Huanghe, which was already swollen from seasonal flooding due to snowmelt in Tibet. As a result, a dam was destroyed. The muddy waters of the Huanghe tumbled over the surrounding plain through the 4.8-kilometer-wide rupture. Entire villages were flooded with mud. The devastating surges of flood waves continued for weeks. 200,000 people died, and 7 million lost their homes. Do you think that this is something unprecedented, comparable to the Genesis flood? Not really. In the decades leading up to 1855, the river had ruptured its dams several times, causing flooding, destruction, and death. The flood of 1842 was equally deadly, to say the least, and in 1887, the Yellow River flood killed nearly 1 million people. Just think about it. This was, by some estimates, the worst flood in history in terms of fatalities. But then why did we mention the year 1855? Because it was literally a turning point in the history of the Huanghe. Before this flood, the river flowed into the Yellow Sea, and in 1855, it began to flow into the Bohai Gulf, located 483 kilometers to the north. However, this is not a unique event in the river's history. Here are some figures. Between 602 BC and 1849, the river broke its dams nearly 1,600 times, with 26 major course changes. It moved as many as 8 times between the Bohai Gulf and the Yellow Sea alone. These floods earned the river the nickname China's Sorrow. After every case of flooding that occurred, despite the dams were built higher, and the cost of fixing them often exceeded the annual tax revenues of the entire provinces. The most recent major flooding was in Changshu in 2021. It rained heavily, with an estimated 457 to 617 millimeters of rainfall, almost equal to the annual average, and a dam on the Huanghe River burst west of the city. As a result, hundreds of people were trapped in the subway. In the city, 292 people died, 50 were missing, and 100,000 people were evacuated. One of the pernicious perks of the Yellow River is the microplastics found in its waters. There is more of it in bottom sediments than in water. The average content is 44 to 615 particles per kilogram. The size of microplastic particles is up to 2 millimeters, so they can easily get into the body. Therefore, it certainly needs to be studied, monitored, and managed. Microplastics are not the only problem. Back in 2008, a journalist from The Guardian filed a report stating that a third of the river is unsuitable for agriculture and industrial use due to plant wastewater and sewage. Waste volumes are estimated to run into the billions of metric tons. But despite these threats, Huanghe continues to play a great role in Chinese life and culture.